Imagine settling into your seat in a darkened theater, the smell of popcorn lingering in the air. The lights dim and a hushed silence falls over the audience. A sense of anticipation tingles up your spine as the screen flickers to life, casting eerie shadows across the room. You're about to be transported into a world where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. This immersive experience taps into our primal fears, taking us on a journey through the dark and the mysterious. The real magic of horror films is how they pull us in, making us feel both captivated and terrified as we explore these unsettling places where our deepest fears come to life. But have you ever wondered how this genre evolved into the phenomenon it is today? So sorry for the interruption, just wanted to share. Yes, the inner corner of my eyelash did decide to clock out before the job was done, so I am just serving you some droopy eye realness throughout this video. Enjoy. I am obsessed with and fascinated by horror films, especially how they manage to dissect and reflect societal fears of the time in a very accessible and digestible.
Key nerve to confront this.
No, I disgust you.
Oh, you are sick.
Look at me, Damien.
Blow me.
Sometimes digestible way. And over a year ago, I had this idea. I do a lot of evolution videos, and it made total sense for me to dive into one of the most fascinating evolutions, in my opinion, the evolution of horror films. I originally planned to make this one big, massive video, but I feel like that would be a lot to take in. So instead, I've decided to turn this into a series, yes, a series inside of a series, with each episode focusing on a specific era of horror films. For example, the 80s through the 90s, the 2000s to the 2010s, the 2020s and beyond. You get it. And in this video, we are starting with the origins of horror films from the 1800s up until the 1930s. And just to be clear, I am a know-nothing nobody. Yes, that is my cat burying his ass through the curtains to look out the window. I am not claiming to be the end-all, be-all source of knowledge for horror films. I am just a fan, albeit a very passionate fan. I just want to show how awesome these films are and how they speak to human emotion and society issues. That being said, personally, I consider this my magnum opus. I, again, am very, very passionate about these films, and I'm aware that in the grander scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal, but for me, I really hope you enjoy it. The early days of horror cinema were heavily inspired by Gothic literature. These novels were packed with dark, atmospheric storytelling, making them perfect blueprints for early filmmakers eager to bring these tales to life on the big screen. These stories, with their haunted castles, mad scientists, and creatures of the night, laid the groundwork for the eerie themes and visuals that would become staples of the horror genre. These stories sunk their teeth into some deep themes that filmmakers found irresistible. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for example, is not just about a monster. It's about creation, responsibility, and the dangers of pushing scientific boundaries too far. This struck a chord in the early 20th century when technology was advancing rapidly, and people were both excited and fearful about what the future might bring. Bram Stoker's Dracula offered another rich vein of material. It is full of themes like sexuality, power, and the fear of the unknown. What makes and made horror/gothic literature and horror films so special is that they can explore these ideas under the cover of supernatural scares. And Dracula, my god, he became a symbol for all sorts of fears, from foreign invaders to disease and unchecked desires.
Gothic literature shaped both the narrative and aesthetic of horror films. Brooding landscapes, decrepit mansions, and twisting corridors described in novels were brought to life on screen, creating a sense of dread and suspense. Techniques like unreliable narrators and slowly revealed secrets transitioned from the page to the screen, keeping audiences on edge. The visual elements such as dramatic shadows, eerie lighting, and strange camera angles were inspired by the dark, foreboding atmospheres found in Gothic novels. One of the best examples of this is a film from 1920, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The story revolves around a mysterious doctor and his somnambulist Cesare, who is suspected of committing murders in a small town. The film's twisted visual style mirrors its themes of madness and paranoia, making the audience feel as if they are trapped in a distorted reality. This innovative use of visuals helped establish the eerie, unsettling atmosphere that is so crucial to effective horror. Another film from this period, specifically 1922, that pushed boundaries in both content and style is Haxan, directed by Benjamin Christensen.
Christensen's use of elaborate set designs, special effects, and a mix of scholarly narration and vivid reenactments created a unique and immersive experience. Haxan really challenged societal norms and invited viewers to question the historical injustices faced by women, positioning itself as a critical commentary on superstition and the abuse of power.
Haxan is absolutely one of my favorite films from this time period. Even to this day, the film is terrifying. The visuals are wild. They are burned in my brain forever. But it was not just the visuals that made early horror films compelling. Gothic stories often tackled big moral and ethical questions, giving these films depth that went beyond simple scares. Take The Hunchback of Notre Dame, for example. Based on Victor Hugo's novel, the film deals with themes of social justice, beauty, and what it means to be monstrous. The character of Quasimodo, with his tragic deformity and kind heart, challenges audiences to rethink their perceptions of beauty and humanity.
This exploration of what lies beneath the surface, both literally and metaphorically, mirrors the broader societal fascination with new and transformative experiences. Just as the film invites viewers to look beyond appearances, the early days of cinema encouraged audiences to embrace new ways of seeing and understanding the world. It's also very important to keep in mind that the birth of cinema was, yes, very exciting, but very unsettling for many. The mere existence of moving pictures was a marvel, and for some, capturing reality of some sort on film was almost supernatural.
When the Lumiere brothers first showcased their short films in the late 1890s, audiences were amazed and a bit scared. The Industrial Revolution had already been changing the world in dramatic ways, with the new scientific discoveries and technological advancements that were both exciting and intimidating. The arrival of cinema during this time added to the mix of wonder and nervousness. One of the first notable horror films, and I'm sorry in advance for butchering this entirely, Georges Méliès' Les Manoirs du Diable from 1896, sometimes known in English as The Haunted Castle or The House of the Devil. This groundbreaking horror film, running just over 3 minutes, is widely considered the first horror movie. Complete with cauldrons, animated skeletons, ghosts, transforming bats, and ultimately an incarnation of the devil, Les Manoirs du Diable set the precedent for the supernatural in cinema. Though not intended to be terrifying, more wondrous, which was in line with Méliès' style of creating magical and fantastical scenes, the film was a pioneering example of using special effects to create an eerie atmosphere. Méliès was a master illusionist as well as a filmmaker who loved to explore the fantastical. And his ability to bring such vivid, otherworldly scenes to life on screen was nothing short of revolutionary for the time. His use of trick photography, stop motion, and other early special effects techniques created visuals that had never been seen before.
While Le Manoir du Diable may seem simple by today's standards, its imaginative use of supernatural themes laid the groundwork for what would become a cornerstone in the genre. It introduced audiences to the idea that films could explore the macabre and the fantastical, paving the way for a century of horror that would continue to evolve and continue to captivate its viewers.
As we look back at Méliès's work, it's clear that his innovative approach and willingness to experiment with special effects were crucial in establishing the visual language of horror. As we move into the early 20th century, another significant influence on horror cinema emerged. It was something I very briefly mentioned earlier, German Expressionism. This artistic movement, characterized by its use of distorted shapes, exaggerated shadows, and surreal settings, sought to express emotional experiences rather than physical reality. It was a reaction to the disillusionment and instability in post-World War I Germany, capturing the inner turmoil and anxiety of the time.
I briefly touched on the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari when I mentioned atmosphere earlier, and add another dub for that film because it is also a masterclass in German Expressionism.
Another example of German Expressionism in horror is Waxworks from 1924. This silent film employed expressionist techniques like warped sets and dramatic performances to craft a surreal, nightmarish atmosphere. The film's unsettling visuals and themes of madness and control reflected the societal instability and fear of the unknown prevalent in post-war Germany.
The 1920s also brought significant technological advancements in filmmaking. Innovations in special effects and makeup allowed filmmakers to create more convincing and terrifying monsters. Progress in this area can be seen in films like 1925's Phantom of the Opera.
Lon Chaney's horrifying makeup transformed him into a grotesque phantom, enhancing the film's ability to evoke fear. These advancements not only improved the realism and impact of horror films, but also expanded the possibilities for storytelling within the genre.
Did you really just knock over Pat McAfee too? And Macho Man? Whatever. Yes, I'll pet you. Side note, I swear to God, Lon Chaney never slept. That man bounced from film to film to film. Him and Todd Browning, actually, and they worked on quite a few together. Lon Chaney has been in 162 films, and yes, some of those were short films, between 1912 and 1930. And to give you a modern day comparison, Anthony Hopkins has been in 147 titles in 60 years. Lon Chaney did more in 18 years. Rant over, that was just crazy to see. Now we enter the 1930s. It's actually probably more appropriate to say that Universal Studios broke down the door to the 1930s. They were the big dogs of the decade for sure. Their dominance in horror began in 1931 with Dracula. Bela Lugosi's portrayal of the titular character was and is incredibly iconic. His Hungarian accent is now synonymous with Dracula. And this film, like the novel before it, beautifully tapped into those fears of something foreign and unknown.
Dracula was a massive success, cementing horror as a popular genre in Hollywood. It blended old-world mystique with the growing fears of the supernatural. At the time, society was grappling with rapid scientific advancements and a heightened interest in spiritualism and the occult, leading to a fascination with and fear of what lay beyond the natural world. Building on the success of Dracula, Universal Studios continued to explore themes of scientific hubris and the consequences of playing God with 1931's Frankenstein, directed by James Whale. It starred Boris Karloff, and his portrayal of the monster brought a new level of empathy and tragedy to the character. The film resonated deeply with audiences during this time of rapid technological advancement, reflecting societal anxieties about the potential dangers of such progress. The iconic image of Karloff's monster with its square head and neck bolts became synonymous with the horror genre itself. In the same vein, The Mummy from 1932 introduced another classic monster to the Universal roster. The film explored themes of ancient curses and the fear of the past haunting the present, which was very relevant at this time when society was growing more fascinated with archaeology and the mysteries of ancient civilizations.
During this time, other studios, of course, wanted to capitalize on the popularity of horror films. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from Paramount Pictures offered a unique take on the duality of human nature, while MGM's Freaks, directed by Todd Browning, one of my absolute favorite movies of all time ever, pushed boundaries by portraying societal outcasts and exploring themes of normalcy and monstrosity.
Though controversial and initially banned in several regions, Freaks became a cult classic, showcasing the era's willingness to tackle uncomfortable truths about human nature, societal norms, and marginalization at a time when many people were experiencing significant hardship and uncertainty. The film's portrayal of outsiders and outcasts struck a chord with audiences who felt alienated and disenfranchised due to the economic collapse. The stark depiction of struggle, survival, and the human capacity for cruelty and compassion mirrored the harsh realities of daily life during the Depression.
This raw and unflinching look at the lives of others offered audiences a chance to reflect on their own struggles and the societal structures that contributed to their plight, making the film's message very impactful. The economic hardships and societal despair pushed many other filmmakers to explore themes of survival and human suffering. People flocked to cinemas, seeking an escape from the harsh realities of their everyday life. Horror films, with their tales of monsters and mayhem, provided a much-needed break from the outside world's troubles. Movies like 1932's White Zombie and 1934's The Black Cat became very popular, offering a source of entertainment and a way for viewers to process their fears. These films created a shared space for audiences to confront and momentarily forget their own anxieties. Additionally, the lingering effect of the Spanish flu pandemic and World War I continued to shape the cultural landscape, adding layers of psychological depth to the horror cinema of the time.
Films like Nosferatu reflected societal fears of disease and death. Also important to note here that the crew behind Nosferatu included many Jewish gay creatives, whose perspectives, of course, added layers of depth and subtext to the film. For instance, Heinrich Galeen, who co-wrote the screenplay, was a Jewish writer and director who had a significant impact, of course, on the film's narrative and its atmospheric style. His background in the Jewish community, of course, influenced the film's exploration of themes such as otherness and persecution. Additionally, the director F.W. Murnau was a closeted gay man whose personal experiences and societal position also influenced his artistic choices. The character of Count Orlok can be seen as a symbol of the outsider or the other, a concept that resonated deeply with both Jewish and LGBTQ+ communities, who of course faced significant discrimination at the time. Count Orlok can also be interpreted as a physical manifestation of war, sucking the life out of Europe and leaving devastation in its wake. This subtext of marginalization, fear of the unknown, and the horrors of war added more and more layers of meaning to the film, making it way more than just a simple vampire story.
This was a time when immigration and xenophobia were rampant, and horror films often mirrored these societal tensions. The Golem, How He Came into the World, and Faust are prime examples of how cinema reflected the fears and prejudices at this time.
The Golem, How He Came into the World is set in 16th century Prague and tells the story of a Jewish rabbi who creates a monstrous clay figure, the Golem, to protect the Jewish community from persecution. The film is deeply rooted in Jewish folklore, and like Nosferatu and Freaks, explores themes of otherness as well as fear and the dangers of unchecked power. By bringing the Golem to life, the film addresses the anxieties of a society grappling with the presence of marginalized groups and the consequent rise in xenophobia and anti-Semitism. The Golem, as an outsider and protector, becomes a symbol of the struggles faced by the Jewish community during this era.
Similarly, F.W. Murnau's Faust again delves into themes of otherness through its adaptation of the classic tale. The film tells the story of Faust, a man who makes a pact with the devil Mephisto in exchange for unlimited knowledge and worldly pleasures.
Faust is famous for its stunning visual effects and expressionist style, which vividly bring to life the themes of temptation, corruption, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. The character of Mephisto, with his sinister charm and supernatural powers, embodies the fear of the unknown and the foreign, once again reflecting the societal anxiety of the time. The film's portrayal of Faust's journey into moral ambiguity and his eventual redemption mirrors the broader cultural concerns about immigration and the fear of losing one's identity amidst societal changes. Both the Golem and Faust used their narratives to explore and critique the era's prevailing xenophobia and prejudice, all while highlighting how horror can serve as a powerful medium for examining and reflecting on contemporary social issues.
As societal anxieties evolved, so too did the tools that filmmakers used to convey them. The advent of sound in cinema in the late 1920s was revolutionary for all genres of film, but specifically horror. The ability to incorporate dialogue and sound effects added a new dimension to the genre, making films even more immersive and terrifying. Dracula and Frankenstein were among the first to benefit from this technological leap, and their success paved the way for other sound era classics.
In addition to the technological advancements, the 30s took on more occult and spiritualist themes in horror cinema. Films like The Black Cat explored these themes, reflecting the public's fascination with the supernatural and the unknown. Practices like seances and the use of Ouija boards were popular during this time, and horror films capitalized on these interests.
The 1930s also saw the introduction of the Production Code in 1934, which was a set of strict guidelines imposed to regulate the content of films. This code, often referred to as the Hays Code, was implemented in response to growing public and governmental concerns over the perceived immorality in Hollywood films. The censorship, as you can imagine, significantly impacted horror, forcing filmmakers to devise innovative ways to convey terror without resorting to explicit content. Despite these restraints, horror did prevail. Films like Bride of Frankenstein and Dracula's Daughter managed to push the envelope and explore themes like sexuality and power. Specifically, Dracula's Daughter subtly suggested themes of homosexuality and also reinforced the idea that vampires have long symbolized sex, death, and power. Other notable films from this time include the aforementioned The Black Cat, which dealt with incredibly dark themes like sadism and, necrophilia under the guise of supernatural horror.
This creativity not only kept audiences engaged, but also paved the way for further innovation in the genre. As the decade progressed, Universal Studios continued to produce influential horror films. Movies like The Invisible Man, The Raven, and Werewolf of London introduced new and memorable monsters, further expanding the horror universe. These films really showed Universal's commitment to innovation and their keen understanding of the public's appetite for fear and fascination. The Invisible Man, directed by James Whale and based on H.G. Wells' novel, showcased groundbreaking special effects that made the character's invisibility both convincing and terrifying. The film's blend of science fiction and horror pushed the boundaries of what was possible on screen. In The Raven, Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi teamed up to deliver a chilling tale inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's works. The film's haunting atmosphere and the macabre themes resonated with viewers. Werewolf of London was the first mainstream werewolf movie, setting the stage, of course, for many to come. It combined folklore with a modern twist, exploring themes of transformation and the duality of human nature. The film's innovative makeup and special effects brought the werewolf to life, leaving a lasting impact on the genre.
These films showcase Universal's ability to continuously push the boundaries of storytelling and visual effects. By doing so, they solidified their reputation as the leading producer of horror films, ensuring that the genre remained vibrant and ever-evolving. Universal's dedication to exploring new themes and creating iconic monsters kept audiences coming back for more, proving that horror was here to stay.
From the Gothic influences of the 19th century to the iconic monster films of the 1930s, these movies mirrored the collective psyche of their audiences, offering a way to confront and process their deepest fears. The influence of German Expressionism, coupled with technological advancements and societal upheavals like the Great Depression and the Spanish flu pandemic, played pivotal roles in shaping the horror genre. As we move beyond the 1930s, the world begins to grapple with the aftermath of global conflict and the dawn of a nuclear age. The story of horror continues, with each decade introducing new monsters and fears. Filmmakers constantly push the boundaries of the genre, continuing to create pictures that capture the zeitgeist and underlying tensions of their era. The evolution of horror films is a ever-evolving journey through our darkest nightmares and our deepest societal fears. In the 1940s, the Wolfman prowls through the fog, embodying the era's fears of transformation and the loss of control. By the 1950s, the murky abyss of Creature from the Black Lagoon and the creeping paranoia of Invasion of the Body Snatchers reflect a society on edge, where new threats loom large and unseen dangers lurk beneath the surface.